Okay. So if you're going to solve by factoring, again, there's other ways we can do this one. The big thing is if you're going to do factoring, the equation has got to equal zero. If it's not, just rewrite it so it does. Okay, so if you've got it, again, we'll look at some of those examples here in a second where it's this way. But if it's not equal to zero, just rewrite it and then make it that way. Okay, after you've got it rewritten, so it's equal to zero, you're going to factor the equation. And then you set each parentheses equal to zero. And then you solve. And the solving on these should be really easy because you're going to have like x plus 3 equals 0 and 2x minus 1 equals 0. So the solving is going to be really, really, really easy when it comes down to these. Okay, and for solving by factoring, that's all you're going to do. So if it's got to equal 0, if it doesn't, rewrite it so it does equal 0. Then you factor the equation and you set each parentheses equal to 0, and then you solve it. Okay. Again, the big asterisk starting at the top here, the big notation and the big bullet is that the equation's got to equal 0. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to look at the stuff that we've been doing yesterday, and then we previewed a little bit last week. So we're going to go back and just give you a chance to practice on factoring. Because again, some of y'all said that y'all haven't ever seen factoring because of COVID. Got everything kind of messed up. So this is our chance to kind of play catch up here to make sure everybody's good. So. All right, so we'll just run through a bunch of different scenarios so you can see all the problems we got, and then just make sure that you're okay with everything here. So. Okay, and the biggest difference between the factoring homework and the solving homework is the directions. If it just says to factor, it's going to say factor. If it says solve, well, then it says solve. So you're basically looking at two different things here. Oh, and one other side note here over here on the side we do. That they'll talk about this later, but to me, we'll go ahead and talk about it now because we're factoring. Your highest power of x, which is the degree, is going to equal the number of solutions. Okay. And sometimes I don't know why they wait to talk about this until like later on because it seems like obvious here. So in these problems we're going through, if it's x squared, we know we're looking for 2 solutions. If it was x to the third, we're looking for 3 solutions. If it was x to the fourth, we're going to look for 4 solutions. So whatever your highest power of x is, that's how many solutions you're going to look for when you're solving these things. Okay, so for this one, again, easy factoring on this one because it's equal to 0, so we got the first step done. Now we're just going to take this thing and factor it. So it's just what are the factors of negative 14 where the sum's going to equal negative 5. Okay, so for this one, all right, Will, how do we know what signs are which when we do? Because we go through our factors. We got 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. How do we know which sign goes with what and where? All right, goes with the which number? Okay, goes with the bigger number, right? So we'll put a negative there. Okay, and then a negative divided by negative makes the other number a positive, right? So if you divide these two numbers, because you got negative over negative, should make the other number a positive. But yeah, that sign here always goes with the bigger factor. And then you just divide these two numbers to see what this number is going to be. Okay, so we got a negative there, and we got a positive there. Okay, the only pair that's going to get you to -5 would be 2, 7. Okay, and the only difference is yesterday we got here and we were factoring and we were done. The only thing you do different is that if it asks you to solve it, well, after you factor it, you've got your two sets of parentheses. Then you just take this parentheses, set it equal to 0, and you take this parentheses and set it equal to 0. All right, again, the solving should be really easier because this one you're just going to subtract 2 from both sides. So x equals -2. This one you would just add 7 to both sides. X equals 7. It probably will be 1, so you probably have to put -2, 7 online. Yeah. If we're, and again, depends on how we go. If it's multiple choice answers, it'll have both answers, listed as one. If it's a blank like this where you just fill it out, you can either write it like that, or if you write it like this, I'm okay with that one. But to me, if you're already here, just write it 2 separate ways there is fine. So either one's fine. But yeah, this would be your option for the online homework. How to do something like that. Okay, everybody all right there? Everybody okay with what we did and how we got to where we're going there? Sure. All right, so what happens if it doesn't equal 0? Let's do this. Let's do x squared plus x equals 42. All right, again, if you're going to do factor by grouping, you've got to make it equal to 0. And it's easier if the first term is x squared is positive. So if you wind up moving it around to make x squared negative, don't, because it makes it more difficult if the x squared term is negative. So it's easier if you make x squared term positive. So for this one, let's just subtract the 42 and bring it over here to the left-hand side. Okay, so that way we're looking at x squared plus x minus 42 equals 0. Okay, and then from there, it's just your normal, solving, running through everything, doing what we need to do here. So we're looking for the factors of -42, where the sum is going to equal, in this case, a +1, because your b value in that case, even though there's not a number there, we're just assuming that's going to be a 1 that's going to be there. So for that one, your a value is 1, your b value is 1. Okay, and then I think Emma asked yesterday. She said, "Do you have to list if you're going to show your work? Do you have to show all the numbers on this one that you do?" No, because if this is a -42, one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative, right? So whenever we're subtracting these numbers, is there any way it's going to be 1 and 42 or 2 and 21? Numbers are way too far apart, right? It's going to have to be when you get closer to like 6 and 7 that you're going to be able to kind of get the numbers there. Okay. So let's see, Carissa, how do we know which number is going to be positive or negative? Okay, yeah. So the bigger number is positive, or the big term is positive. So the bigger number always has to be positive. And if we do a negative divided by a positive, it means that the number's got to be a negative. Okay, so the only way we can get 1 is going to be 7 minus 6. So we're looking at those two there. So we got an x minus 6 and an x plus 7. Okay. Okay, again, this is one of those where when we get to the test, next week when we're getting there, You just got to realize the difference is it say factor or solve. If it says factor, you're done because there won't be an equal zero. It'll just be that, and you'll be done with it. But if it's solving, you got to go that extra step of taking both parentheses and set them equal to zero. Okay, now, and honestly, if it's this short of a problem, you don't have to show your work because if it's x minus 6, you know you're going to just do plus 6 on both sides. So we know that would be x would equal positive 6. It's x plus 7, you know you're going to subtract 7 on both sides. So then x would equal negative 7. All right, everybody okay there? All right, let's crank it up a little bit. Everybody's good on those two. We'll make it a little bit tougher here. Okay, let's go 9x squared minus 25 equals 0. All right, only two terms. And again, once you got equal to 0, you can kind of just forget about that for a second. Now you're looking at the left-hand side. It's only two terms. Is there a greatest common factor with 9 and 25? No, so we can't do that. That means it's got to be perfect squares. 9x squared, it's got to be the same number of times itself. So that's 3x times 3x. 25, 5 times 5. So if we're going to factor it, just shortcut here, it's going to be 3x plus 5. And then 3x minus 5. Okay, and again, yesterday, once we got here, we were done, but if it tells you to solve, or if it's got the equal 0 in it, if it's got an equal sign in it somewhere, then we got to actually go through the steps and solve it. The good news is that once you solve one of these, you really have got the other one solved. I think somebody asked me this yesterday. I can't remember now who it was. Might have been May on this one. If you got 3x plus 5 is equal to 0, you're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And then you're going to divide by 3. That means x is going to be negative 5/3. Okay, if you solve the other one, instead of subtracting 5 from both sides, you're just going to add 5 to both sides. And then you're going to divide by 3. So you get a negative 5/3 and a positive 5/3. So now this is one where if we're solving, if you got these two answers and the only difference is one is positive and one is negative, instead of writing out both numbers like this, you can put the plus or minus 5/3 so it looks like that. Okay, so was that May asked me that yesterday or was that somebody else? Okay, Sophia. Okay. So yeah, so that's where we're going to get to that today. So when you're solving it, you can put the plus or minus, and that will always be the case. That will be the case every single time if you've got the difference of two perfect squares. The answers will be the same. It's just one's going to be a positive and one's going to be negative. So it should give you the option to do the shortcut here. I have seen Math Excel before at times not let you do the plus or minus. So if you put plus or minus and Math Excel counts it wrong, go back and try it separately, where you've got 5/3 and then negative 5/3. But it should let you use the plus or minus button just to make things easier. They might, again, I've seen it occasionally do this where it doesn't like this plus or minus here, and they make you write it 2 separate times. But that is an option that you can have. All right, got 2 more, and then we're done. So we'll get done a little early today and let y'all work on some homework, kind of knock some stuff out here. All right, let's make this a tough one. Let's go at 4x squared plus x minus 5 equals 0. Okay, 3 terms. First term is not 1. There is no greatest common factor, so we only get to do, there's no shortcuts on this one. We're going to have to do the bottoms up here, AC method. We're going to do 4 times negative 5, which is negative 20. And we got to find the factors of negative 20, where the sum is going to equal, in this case, positive 1. All right, good thing with 20 is there's not a whole lot of options for 20. It's either 1 and 10, or sorry, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, or 4 and 5. Okay, Dallas, on this one, how do we know which number's positive, negative? How do we know what we're doing here? All right, and it's positive, so which number is going to be positive? There we go, bigger number's positive. Okay. Okay, and again, to get the other sign, just simplify this like it was a fraction. If you had a positive 20 and a negative 20 and divide it, we know the answer is going to be 1. But if you divide a positive negative, the answer's got to be a negative. There we go. All right. Okay, so the only way we're going to get positive 1 is going to be the 4 and the 5. Okay, again, the big thing with this when we're doing the AC method is once you get here, remember that you're not done. That's on like the halfway point. Because if you look at it, if you just multiply the last 2 numbers, it's negative 4 times 5, that's negative 20. This number's got to be at 5 if we multiply the last 2 numbers. So it's too big, so we got to divide everything by 4. All right, so that's x minus 1, x plus 5/4. All right, now here's the thing with this one. We could do bottoms up, but if we do bottoms up, it's actually going to take this thing a little bit longer, because if we're solving on these that we're doing back up here when we're going to solve, is once you've got it here, you don't have to do bottoms up. I mean, you can if you want to, but it's just going to take a little bit longer because we're going to set both of these parentheses equal to 0. So if you set this equal to 0 and you set this equal to 0, and some people are freaking out because they're like, I don't like fractions. Okay, but hang on just a second though. Because when we solve this one, we're going to add 1 to both sides. We get x equals 1. If this is x plus 5/4, all we're really going to do is subtract 5/4 from both sides. And we're going to get x equals negative 5/4. And you may be saying, well, why didn't we do bottoms up? Well, because if we had done bottoms up here, just give you a what if here. If we took the 4, put it in front of the x, made it 4x plus 5. Then we're going to take the parentheses away. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. You get 4x equals negative 5, and then you're going to divide by 4. You're going to get the same answer, but now you just had to rewrite it. Then you took it back and rewrote it and put it back in fraction form. So, it's just, if you do bottoms up on that one, it's just going to take a little bit longer. You still get the same answer. But then some people are like, well, I'd rather do bottoms up every single time just to make sure I'm doing it when I'm factoring. So if you do it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that if it just helps you to keep the rhythm going of what you're doing. So, just realize if you want to take a little bit of a shortcut, you can stop here and then just, change the sign of this number. But if you want to go ahead and do bottoms up and move it this way, that's absolutely totally fine too. I know some people would rather do that just to keep the pattern going when they're factoring and going through stuff in this. All right, everybody good there? So far, so good? All right, one more and then we're done. All right, let's go with 2x to the third minus 14x squared equals negative 24x. Okay. Again, if it tells you to solve by factoring, again, first thing is it doesn't equal 0. So I'm going to add a number back over here so it does equal 0. We got 2x to the third minus 14x squared plus 24x. Okay, we've only got 3 terms on the left-hand side, so we're doing the 3 terms. The first term is not 1. So, but before we do the 8 times the c in this case, if you notice they're all even, right? So we're looking for greatest common factor, which is 2. They all have an x, right? So you got x3, x2, x1, basically. So take out the smaller amount of x's, that would be just an x to the first. And then tell me what you got left over. All right, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. 3 x's, you take 1 out, that's going to leave you with x squared. 14 divided by 2 is 7. You got 2 x's, take 1 out, you still got 1 left over. 24 divided by 2 is 12. Take an x out, which just leaves you there. Okay. All right, so once you take out the greatest common factor, just kind of leave it outside for a minute, forget about it. Now you've got x squared minus 7x plus 12. This was one just like you can factor like everything else we've been doing. So for this part of it, we're looking for the factors of positive 12. Yeah, so we got the factors of positive 12. We want the sum to equal negative 7. Again, for the 2x for a little bit, just forget about it for a little bit. We'll come back to it in a little bit. All right, we know it's not going to be 1 and 12. We know it's not going to be 2 and 6. We know it's really the only choice has got to be 3 and 4, right? Okay. Do what? Yeah, so in this case, they're both going to be negative, right? Because your b term is negative. So we know the bigger number has got to be negative. If you divide a positive and negative, that means the other one's going to be a negative. So negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. But if you do negative 3 plus negative 4, that's negative 7. Okay, now if we were factoring, again, we would just put that here and we were done, we were good to go with it. If we're solving, we said you got to take each parentheses equals 0. And here's the one thing with this one is that when you take out this greatest common factor, they never write it this way, but you can think about that greatest common factor being in the parentheses by itself also. So that when you set this thing equal to 0, you're going to set 2x equals 0. You're going to do x minus 3 equal to 0. And you're doing x minus 4 equals 0. Again, if you go back to the highest power back up here, we had 2x to the third, right? So if the highest power is x to the third, that means we're looking for 3 solutions. And there's going to be our 1, 2, 3 solutions we get here. All right. Take 0 and divide it by 2. Still to 0. There we go. This one, we're just going to add 3 to both sides. This one, we would add 4 to both sides. So there's your 3 solutions. Okay. And again, if you're doing online homework, it's probably going to be where they're going to give you a box, and you just put 0, 3, and 4. And there is no specific order on the answers. As long as you got a 0 and a 3 and a 4, doesn't matter if it's 0, 3, 4 or 4, 3, 0 or 304 or 403. Just as long as you got the correct numbers in there, the order doesn't matter when it comes out.